computer. Morning everyone, welcome to this week's Starting Your Own Business show. I am absolutely over the moon to welcome Vicki Mitman along, who has become a very, very dear colleague in business, and I can't quite actually understand how I managed to do so, get through so many years without knowing you properly, actually, Vicki. So thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Okay, so Vicki's friendship and support to the business is actually one of the bonuses out of lockdown, because within the franchise business fraternity, we all started working together and communicating and supporting. And whilst I had known of Vicki, and I think we'd even had a chat prior to that, it was during that time that we really got to know each other. So there are positives to what has happened to us all in the last 18 months. The reason I've asked Vicki on to the show today is because Vicki has got a very, very special story to tell and a very special talent to share. It's called From Profession to Passion. Now, what that's talking about is the fact that Vicki, as you can see, is very, very professional compared to me. And is a solicitor, an incredibly competent and well-known solicitor at that. And Vicki has found out over the years that actually there's a passion in her life, and recently has spent time working on drilling down what that's all about, and now has her own side hustle of from profession to passion to offer the world. Vicki, would you like to tell us a little bit about it? I know the story and I think it's fascinating, and I do think it's a story that is going to resonate with so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a lawyer in private practice for many years, and I liked it. There was a lot that I really enjoyed, and I still am a franchise specialist lawyer, which is my niche area. But about 4 years ago, I began thinking there must be more to it. I just didn't want to be a lawyer all the time, every day, forever. And I realized I had a lot of other interests and hobbies and passions, which could be a business, which could be another career opportunity. And I wasn't really exploring any of them because I was working very long hours for an employer full time. So I looked at how I might be able to combine what I like doing as my profession in law and what I wanted to do elsewhere. So coaching and mentoring is the business I started, and I spent 3 years studying for a qualification, the ILM Level 7 in Executive Mentoring, which is, yeah, it's about as boring as it sounds, but it's actually really important because it showed me why I loved it, and it really entrenched the knowledge I already had and started me with great foundations. And during that time, I had to do some coaching hours, and I began to really love the impact I could have as a coach rather than just as a legal advisor, because they're two very different styles. And people come to me as a lawyer and say, Vicki, what should we do? What do we have to do? What's the law? What's your advice? And as a coach, it's really more about finding out what the person I'm coaching has within them and can bring out. And that's usually really transformative and exciting. So I've now set up this business, and there was a few bumps along the way, lots of learning curves, but I've realized it is absolutely possible to be a lawyer and a coach. And I love both with equal measure now.
That's, you see, this is the intriguing thing, because we've been hearing this phrase side hustle for, I don't know, a couple of years now. I think it was probably about 2 years ago I first heard it. I thought, well, that sounds a bit groovy. But you're actually the living, breathing embodiment of somebody who has created a side hustle. And I think the origins of naming your side hustle Profession to Passion is that you started to realize there was an awful lot of other professional people out there who are looking to bring their passion to the surface and monetize it in some way. So is it, which is an intriguing situation in itself, because I feel over the last 18 months, it's not just people who are in what was perceived as the traditional professions who are wanting to do this. It's in across the board. There's so many people out there who want that extra string to their bow. Have you come across that much?
Yeah, I have. And I mean, not all the people I coach are traditional professionals. But the reason I probably focused on that in my coaching, in my group that I set up on Facebook, From Profession to Passion, was because with traditional professions like law, medicine, etc., there's usually a pretty well-trodden path you are directed down from the time you arrive at a law firm as a trainee solicitor, and then you qualify once you've done your 2 years training, and then you're taken on hopefully by that firm or by another. And then, you know, there's a progress. You progress to associate, senior associate, legal director, partner, and there's sort of only one way you can really go, otherwise you're just not succeeding. That's the perception. So I wanted to help people like me who were professionals on this path they didn't feel was quite right for them, because I actually didn't want to be a partner in a law firm. I think I know several of them. A lot of my friends are now partners, and I completely understand why it's exciting, but I didn't want that for me. So I thought, I still want to progress as a lawyer, but I want something else. But you're right, it does happen with people outside of the traditional professions, but people who have maybe been in the corporate world and then stopped to have children, or come out of that and thinking, actually, I just don't want quite the hours I used to work. I don't perhaps want the commute I used to do. And certainly over the last 18 months and COVID, you talked about some good coming out of it. I think it has given people a different perspective. And people that might have had an hour's commute each way every day have now had that time back. And whether they spend that just relaxing or with their family or working on something that's a bit more exciting for them, a lot of people have been talking to me about it in the last 18 months. And I thought, if people are talking to me about it and I'm living and breathing it, then there are probably others that want something but don't know it's possible.
Yeah.
And particularly, you know, people say, oh, you're mad to leave a profession that's so well respected, or you're mad to leave that job that's really secure and that consistent paycheck. And some of it is a bit scary. And the people I talk to often say that's the fear they have, like, you know, that they can do this, they can do that, but can they do everything else? Can they run a business? And as you've explored with David in some of your previous episodes, I know, and as you've worked out yourself, and certainly David has, and I have too now, there's a lot more to running a business, which you're never prepared for before you run a business.
No, that's why come and talk to me, because I've got 20 years experience of
exactly.
all
So
the things that can possibly happen.
And I spoke to you about it when, you know, I was a lawyer, and I was, you know, I knew you through the franchise world because we're both in that industry, but I also spoke to you about my own coaching business and about the business side. And it was really great to talk to other people in business, doing it, living it, breathing it, and have had all the bumps in the road that I've had too.
Yeah,
because it can be quite lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we do this show, because not everybody has the connections to have that chat, or has the confidence at this stage to have that chat. So just having a listen, or having the option to send in questions, hopefully will help that conversation come along. Now, I do have an intriguing question here for you, hopefully. With the people that you've met who are interested in creating these side hustles, is part of their motivation so that they have got something that they can transition to away from their profession in due course when the time is right for them? Is it like the plan B that's going to become their plan A?
Yes, I mean, sometimes yes. For me, I wanted a balance. I wanted a flexibility. I wanted to do both because I was told when I was younger, you can have it all, and I believed it. And even though it's difficult, I've worked and I've managed to make that happen for me in a way that suits me. But there are a lot of people that say, you know, I'm just not quite satisfied in this area of my life. And although it's something I know and I've got skills from it, maybe I don't want to do it forever.
Yeah.
Or maybe, you know, maybe the stress or the hours or whatever it might be is just not worth it anymore. In that particular stage of life. So they're looking at something they can build up, and then once it's functioning properly, because a lot of people are understandably reluctant to let go of the known and the safe and secure for something they don't know altogether. And I think it was in a previous one of your videos when David said, or it could have been something he said to me, you know, if people start with a comfort blanket, they often don't take the risks they need to in business. They don't start with that drive and that passion to make it work. And actually I fell victim to that. When I first came sort of out of private practice, I started consulting for another law firm, but I thought, well, I've got this comfort blanket, so I can pay myself the same salary that I used to get for at least a year. And I knew I was starting with that. But as a result, it took me nearly a year before I really launched my coaching business. And I wonder if I'd have not had that safety blanket, if I'd have started sooner. But going back to your point, yeah, I think a lot of people are looking for something else, and maybe it's their side hustle or their hobby that they think, oh, if only I could do this full time, if only this paid me, or if I had the income from this aspect, I'd be so much happier.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of points there that you raised that are very interesting. The comfy blanket, or the comfort zone that people talk about. is something I find really fascinating, because it is something that we all manage to do repeatedly to ourselves.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, what we're doing is we are applying limitations to ourselves. So by getting our comfy blanket around us, we create limitations, and then those become barriers, and you have to remove them. I feel, as a business person and also as a human being, that constantly challenging those barriers is really, really important for me. And I know that by challenging them and doing something about it, putting myself in scenarios that I'm not very often in, meeting new people, that's always a good one as well. It really helps to remove those barriers, those limitations, or at least make them, if they were really thick and made of breeze blocks or something, makes them really, really thin to nearly transparent, so that they just evaporate, basically. How do you help people to evaporate their limitations with your coaching?
That's a really good question, and I suppose it's a little bit different for everyone, but I would usually start with really trying to understand where that limitation starts, and it's usually rooted in a fear, either a fear of failure or a fear of embarrassment or fear of judgment. In my respect, it was a fear of failure, and I can admit that now and say, actually, that wasn't helping me. It was there for a reason, and our fears are there for a reason. They're there to protect us. And our mind tries very hard to protect us. It doesn't like us doing things it's never done before, because we don't know what will happen.
Yeah.
So we've got to constantly push against that. And working with a coach can be really helpful, because the coach can help you understand what the block is, and really drill down into what that is, not just what it might look like one day, but where it's stemming from and the roots in it, and then helping to unpick those roots a little bit. And I had some great coaching as I was transitioning out of private practice into a self-employed role as a consultant solicitor, and as I was starting my business. And a lot of that was about some uncomfortable conversations that I didn't want to have, and I wouldn't have had with myself, because it would have been too uncomfortable and my mind would have just stopped it.
Yeah.
But I had someone else say to me, but why is that important? Why is that stopping you? Why is it uncomfortable?
The why question. Yeah.
Right. And that's really, really crucial. I mean, you can do a lot of it yourself, and I do coach myself a little bit, but I also have external coaches, and I think that's so valuable. And frankly, I would feel a bit of a fraud as a coach if I said coaching's really valuable, but no, I don't have a coach myself. I have 3 coaches that I work with. I have a business coach, I have an executive coach, I have a mindset coach, and I love that, because it's forcing me every day to think about things in a different way, to challenge myself. And I spent a long time, I suppose, getting comfortable in my legal profession, because you do spend a long time as a trainee lawyer, as a junior lawyer, feeling like you don't know what you're doing. And even if you do know what you're doing, there's probably lots more out there you have no idea about. So I started to get comfortable in law, and I was just feeling comfortable when there was this part of me saying, well, isn't there something else? And I thought maybe I should follow that, because maybe my body and my brain and my soul all want to be doing more than I was already, and maybe I don't want to be that comfortable. So I've got really good at being uncomfortable now. It's taking time.
Yeah, getting good at being uncomfortable is actually a really good, excellent thing to do. But yeah, going on from what you were just saying, we cannot help ourselves, because not everybody is in a position to be able to finance a coach, or even ready to do that. It can come quite a long way down the line in terms of the decision-making process. So yeah, there's loads of books and resources out there, including just, watching a show like this for 30 minutes with a cup of tea is part of coaching, because it will get the brain cells moving. There'll be a nugget in here. You're only ever looking for one nugget that you can do something with. Turn that nugget, turn that stone, and see what's underneath it. So reading the right books is really, really important. You use the word fear, and therefore I have to say Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway is the classic self-help book. Have you got another classic, easy to use, so easy to read self-help book? So nothing that's like a PhD thesis. It has to be something that the rest of us who don't always read as much.
I mean, I'm an avid reader, and I ask pretty much everyone I speak to. I think one of the first conversations we ever had was me saying, what's your book list? What do you recommend?
Yeah.
There are loads of great books, and I think you're right. Even if you're not ready to speak to someone directly, if you're not ready to invest in that side, that's not a problem, because I spent years learning and reading, watching, before I even talk to friends about it, let alone talk to a coach about it. So Absolutely. And I found I was looking for information and inspiration. Those are the two things. So one of the best books I read was Simon Sinek's Start With Why, like really work out why you're doing everything, why you get up in the morning, why you do your particular role, what is it that really drives you to start with. And he makes a really good point that there are two tech companies, Apple and Dell, and effectively they both sell the same thing.
Yeah.
But Apple users, and I am an Apple user, my friends is not, we have endless debates about the difference between Apple and Android, but I'm an Apple user, and what I like is it just works. It generally, it's smooth, it fits into my life, it looks nice, it's luxurious. But Apple started with, how we want our customers to feel, whereas Dell started with what product are we going to give our customers to do what they need to do. And they both got to the same thing, but they went there in a different route. So starting with why, then working out how, and then working out what is very different to starting with what your product is, how you're going to solve people's problems, and then why people should buy from you. So that was a really good one. And there is a great book which I reread recently called Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's about how you can start doing anything with really small steps, and that's crucial. The amount of times I've said, right, I'm going to run a 5k, and I've basically gone out, run too far, too fast, and then been knackered, or it's not worked at all. And he said the goal is not to run the 5k, the goal is to become someone who runs regularly. And the first day is putting on some trainers and going for a walk. The second day is putting on trainers and walking a bit further, or walking a bit faster, and then breaking into a jog for a few minutes. But the goal is not to go from A to B that quickly. The goal is to have little steps every day, which makes you into a runner, which can then run a 5k. And that really resonated with me, because I'm a great one, or at least I was, for saying, right, I'm going to do this tomorrow. And I had this big list, and it was almost impossible for anyone to have done that list.
Yeah.
And then I beat myself up for not having achieved what I considered was the standard I'd set for myself, which wasn't even that high anyway. But really, I was putting too much on and expecting a huge amount alongside a busy work schedule and a social life and everything else. So the Atomic Habits was a really great one of just breaking any task, any goal, any inspiration down into very small, manageable steps. And I have achieved so much more thinking that way than I ever had before.
Yeah, and the thinking is key. So that links into the word fear that you referenced.
Yeah.
So how you think is really, really important as you go into business, as you develop your side hustle. You need to become that business person. And I would urge anybody who's doing that to be kind with themselves, because it will be within most of you. We are a country, or a nation of entrepreneurs, a nation of shopkeepers. We can't help it. It will be within you. It just might be deeply hidden or cunningly disguised. So, be really gentle as you find your way through. There are books out there, or self-help things for everybody. There are endless videos or shows to watch that just might give you that bit of inspiration, but moving to that thinking and in slowly taking yourself into that place where your mindset is right for getting your side hustle off of the ground in the right way. And I would encourage anybody not to fear failure. It's not something that even crossed my mind when I went into business. I just got on with it. For me, the word fail is first attempt in learning.
Absolutely right.
It's not a negative thing at all. It's like, not that way, I'm going that way. And when you're doing a side hustle, you've got your main income as a safety net. So the fear should be heavily reduced, really.
Exactly. And I think as well, like, one thing I really focused on with something that came up in some of my early coaching was that I was a real perfectionist, and that wasn't helping me.
Yes,
It's so easy to be a perfectionist, and particularly if you take a great deal of pride in your work, it's very natural to do it. But I've actually got a poster on my wall that says progress, not perfection, and it's so true. And every day I think, am I progressing? It doesn't matter if it's not perfect. Am I doing it? Am I doing something towards the goal?
Yeah,
and that's been so helpful.
This is where the whole thinking thing and getting your mind in the right place, or start moving down the right pathway and challenging yourself, is really, really important, because that is going to question that why with the comfort zone, why with those limitations. And I don't think anybody should feel a great sense of discomfort. It's just taking yourself down that line and saying, it's okay to travel this path. It's okay to discover this about myself, and not have to feel that you're constrained by the profession, by the process, by
the what's normal. Everyone
yeah,
has a
well, no,
belt, that's where they sit.
it's nearly a conveyor belt, isn't it, really? This is what you're going to do next, this is what you're going to next. It's okay to challenge the status quo in your own life without jeopardy.
Absolutely, and that process of exploration is really valuable, because it might teach you that what you thought was a hobby or a side hustle maybe isn't for you, and that's okay too. So maybe stepping back and thinking, okay, well, something wasn't right, what was that, and if this isn't the option that I want to take, what other options are there? And I did a good exercise with a career coach when I was transitioning between being employed to self-employed, and one of the activities was to write down a full list of all of my interests and hobbies. And initially I just sort of started writing down everything. It could be professional or personal. And over the next couple of days, I added to the list, and I had 2 full A4 sides of all these passions and interests. And it really surprised me that I was interested in so much, but of those, I circled the ones I was actually doing regularly, and I could probably only circle 4 or 5 of them. And that just, it really surprised me that all of these things I'm interested in, not just a passing interest because, you know, I went to Spain and saw the Gaudi Sagrada Familia Cathedral, so I wanted to learn a bit more about that. They're not just a passing thing that happened on holiday, but things I'm genuinely interested in, things I choose to read about in my spare time, or, you know, films or videos I would choose to watch because they really inspired me. There was a lot on the list, and I just was doing such a small proportion of it. And I think that's the risk when we get into any kind of routine, particularly if we're fairly safe, we're not terribly uncomfortable, but we know there's more out there. I'd really suggest that, you know, make a list of all your interests and work out how many of them you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, because you might be surprised at how much more you want to do.
So that's all part of the thinking process of getting your mindset in the right place about how do you ensure that you are doing the best by yourself. And that reminds me of a book called Your Best Year Yet by Ginny Ditzler.
I've not read that.
It's a really good one. It's nearly in a workbook format, so it's very straightforward. I used it quite a few years in a row, actually, about 5 years in a row. And basically you're following her story, but it's then asking you the questions why, so that you write your list, so that you're focusing in on what is best for you and moving your life forward. And that might be with your side hustle, might be with your profession, it might be in other areas of your life, because it's understanding that it's the whole 360. And certainly when you complete the transition to being a full-time business leader and business owner, you'll find that it is about the full 360. Work does not become compartmentalized from your private life. You're looking for influences and interactions and inspiration in all areas. It's very, very interesting. So yeah, Best Year Yet, Ginny Ditzler, that's a good one to take a look at.
Great tip, thank you.
So far in your time in the last couple of years since you've been thinking about this, have you come across anybody who's doing some really intriguing side hustles, and what are they?
Well, I don't know if I'd necessarily call them intriguing. I think they're interesting to me in how people got from A to B. So I know accountants that bake cakes on the weekend and started selling wedding cakes and occasion cakes. I know another lawyer who's she's dual qualified both in the UK and Australia. So you know, she went through law school twice. Once was quite enough for me, but she had a side hustle in photography, which she picked up after her first child was born. She decided she wanted to take better photos of her daughter, so she bought a better camera, went on a course, and then started to love it. And then over the time, her friends from NCT classes and things said, "Oh, could you take some photos of my family?" And as a result, then someone else said, "Well, what does she charge for a family shoot?" And it progressed really naturally. But now she's full time in photography, and she doesn't do law at all, because for her it was just where her passion led her. And the more courses she did, the more interested she got, and she's built a business doing that. But it happened very naturally and organically when she was on maternity leave. It started that way anyway. And I also know someone in financial services in Holland who started inspiring people, and he wrote a book about your lighthouse journey, about how, I think Dirk, that sounded actually really an interesting guy. And I had a great chat with him because he's still in the industry that he has been in before, but he found different inspiration and passion and started writing about it and sharing. And I think that's what I wanted for my From Profession to Passion group, was sharing these things so people know that there are people out there doing it and doing it successfully, and they may have totally moved away from the profession to do their business full time. They may be like me, doing a bit of both, or they may have decided actually it wasn't for me, or it's not right now, so I'm going to stick with my current profession. But it's okay to explore this and to think about it.
Do
So, I
the
mean, nothing crazy, but definitely some
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
sides.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm looking forward to the crazy ones. We'll get you back on to hear about those. Does the trigger to go from profession to passion or consider doing it generally come as a result of a life event?
Typically not from the people I've spoken to, although with my friend in Australia, she, you know, it happened because she was on maternity leave and she started thinking about things because she had a child. Whether she would have developed into photography if she hadn't had children, I don't know, and it's hard to tell. But with me, for example, there was no life event. I just thought there must be something else, and I get up now so much happier than I was then because I'm fulfilling a bit more of what I want to do, what I want to provide to the world.
Yeah.
But there are people as well who probably just fall out of love with what they're doing day to day, and actually it's not that they don't really enjoy what their profession is, but maybe they've just lost the luster on it. Maybe they feel very comfortable, they're just going through the motions, it's become routine, and actually what they need to do is to fall back in love with it for them rather than to progress out of it.
Is there
And there
also,
are people
yeah, is
that
there
think that.
also the case that these people might have taken the career paths or work paths that they did because that was what was expected of them, and that, or that's the way that they were directed, rather than finding out at a younger age what really their talent was and what would really make them tick?
Yes, almost certainly. And I think the school system is, we are very lucky in this country with an excellent school system, but it does make you choose at the age of sort of 14, 15, what you're going to narrow down to for GCSEs, and then what you're going to narrow down to for A levels, and then what you're going to specialize in when you're 18 years old, that's going to create the career you want. So that's when you go and do your law degree, or, you know, it is designed all the time to say, well, you're very good at sciences. So, you know, have you thought about medicine? Have you thought about X, Y, Z? Because it's sort of pushing you into careers that you might be good at because of the subjects you were good at when you're a child. And actually, I wasn't very good at school, full stop. I'm happy to admit that I was not academic. I was sporty and I was musical, but I was not good at school. And I had to really force myself to work hard to get enough grades to get to university in the first place. And once I was at university doing politics, I did a secondment, or a little work experience in the House of Lords, and I saw how they were debating the Equality Bill at the time, and
Oh
seeing how it was going
wow.
backwards and forwards, and it was political, but it was also legal.
Hmm.
So I then said to my parents, I really think I'd like to do a law degree, but it came from a passion, and politics was something I was interested in when I left school. And mum and dad said, well, at least if you're going to study something at university, make sure you're interested in it. And that led on to what I then did as a profession, but it wasn't the first stepping stone. I did 2 degrees, and that's what helped me figure out what I wanted to do with that. And that also, being the kind of lawyer I am, I work with a lot of businesses, and maybe working with business owners as opposed to being a private client lawyer, a property lawyer, etc. Maybe working with businesses has helped me think about business in a different way than a lawyer that might be dealing with matrimonial work
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
wills, trust and probate. So perhaps because of that, it led me down to wanting my own business and wanting a career when I can coach and mentor people, because in the franchise sector, that's a huge part of what all franchisors do for their franchisees. And it's something that I've lived and breathed, not just in my legal role, but because my parents were in that industry. So I think the choices we make are they're so complicated. And at no point did my parents say, we want you to be a lawyer when you grow up. And they were really proud when I did it. But also my mum was quite surprised when I said, maybe I don't want to be a lawyer all the time. I might be a coach. And initially she was quite surprised because I'd worked so hard to become a lawyer. I'd got this traction and credibility and reputation in law. So why would I, quote, throw that all away? But I haven't. And it was a way of finding out how to do it my way,
Yeah.
which was really important for me. And it definitely made it easier having supportive parents who said, you know, yeah, let's challenge this. Why are you thinking this way? What are you thinking about? What's the plan? Because it forced me to be a bit more careful about my choices.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting, and I think you know, when we've been in our career or our profession for many years, having the courage to actually say that to ourselves, let alone anybody else, is completely amazing. I've noticed with the university students that having a side hustle is nearly normal now for these guys. For that generation that's coming through, it's something they start doing whilst they're studying. So there's definitely a change in the way that we're choosing to earn money and be happy about how we generate our incomes, which fits really rather nicely with your passion about people being able to do something that expresses themselves. So before we sign off, Vicki, I think I need to know, what's your top tip for anybody who's watching, And secondly, how can they get hold of you if they're in a position or ready to have a chat with a coach?
Absolutely. I think my top tip is find something that inspires you. Look for that, look for information and inspiration. And that's what I did. And it really helped because it also taught me a lot about what I didn't want, but it really focused me on what I did. So read everything, talk to people, watch videos, whatever it is, however you like to learn, do it. And don't be afraid to reach out to people, because someone else out there probably had the same questions that you had, and they might now be doing it like Sam is, like I am. Don't be afraid to reach out, because if nothing more, it's a conversation for a few minutes and that helps give you a bit more information. So I would definitely say find a way to reach out, and social media is great for that. So when it comes to getting hold of me, I would say look for Vicki Mitman on Facebook or LinkedIn, because I'm on it every day. I'm fairly easy to find that way. I think that's the best way to get in touch, because it doesn't have to be as formal as, well, ring me on this number or email me with your thoughts, because actually people might just, they might just want to watch what I'm doing for a little while on Facebook. They might join my group, From Profession to Passion with Vicki Mitman. Please feel free. It's a great group, and we're going to be sharing stories about people that have done just this, and people are going to ask questions. One of the people in the group yesterday said she's not actually ready to start a side hustle, but she's keeping an eye on it. But over the last few years, she's learned a lot about mental resilience and wellness, and she really wants to share that to the group. So that's going to be very valuable. And I wish I'd had someone saying that to me 4 years ago when I was starting out in business. So I think just keep looking for inspiration, follow people, connect with people, and if you can, reach out to them.
Fantastic. Look, Vicki, thank you so much for joining me today. It's just been so great to hear what you have to say and what's going on in your head. You really are a mind of ideas and thoughts and information in particular.
And that's the other thing, that I've always thought I knew what I was doing, and I figured because I've advised businesses for so long, I'd be very natural at it. But the other thing I learned going into business is to know what you don't know and to find the help for that. For example, I didn't know how to raise an invoice, because I had when I was at a law firm, my secretary and my accounts team did that. So it was,
yeah.
it was I always had help. And actually I found out, being in business, a lot of the important stuff is to find out what you don't know and get support for that, because you don't have to do it all yourself. You can have people that are experts at social media, or they're really snazzy with websites, which I'm not. Do something like that.
Okay, look, Vicki, thank you so much for today, and I hope we'll get to chat again soon.
I'm sure we will. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.